the gene editing bill is presuming that in the secondary legislation, this is of course would become primary legislation, that there will be all the regulations to assure safety. So we didn't see those cancer, the requirements for mutagenicity or cancer tests when it came to the biologic product for humans. But we're also, the New Zealand government is a half owner and investor in a startup, a biotechnology startup that's also looking at methane drugs for livestock. So if you think about what happens to mammals when the microbiome is disrupted, there's no discussion in New Zealand about the potential impact on fertility, on growth, reproduction rates. In any of their discussions, they're simply presuming that they'll put a methane drug that will impact the gastrointestinal impact of, sheep or cattle, and that's all. So can you envisage these problems not just for biotechnology outcomes in humans, but in our livestock and agriculture?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as long as you can sort of mandate it, which will be pretty easy with this. You will say that methane is a existential danger to the environment, and therefore you can't run cows unless you give them this drug. Then it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, you have created a market for someone to get rich on, and they will drive that market and get rich. And so this is a problem also with governments getting involved, because then, maybe some information will come along saying, well, actually, methane's not anything like the driver of global warming that we thought. But there's a sort of sunk cost in this, opportunity cost, or sunk cost in the it'll be very hard to undo these things because people who are influential are making money from them. So it sort of colors the whole need. So I mean, it's exactly what we see in the human health, in that we are essentially inventing this risk of pandemics. It's not completely invented, but the risk is the size of the risk. And we're doing that because, simply because there's money in it in the end.
Yes. And the perverse, it's really interesting because you're talking about the money that the government can make. The joint ventures shareholders for this methane and other technology project are Fonterra, the big milk company, Ansco Foods, Rabobank, Ravensdown, Silverfern Farms, Synlait, and as well as at the Ministry for Primary Industries. So these are almost monopoly type firms, or duopoly type firms in New Zealand. They exert enormous power. So the concept that the people supplying the meat and milk and fibre to these firms would then be able to turn around and say, well, we're not going to buy from you if you don't take that drug. You get this massive ethical kind of screw up where these firms are essentially profiting from that product, but they're demanding that the farmers inject or accept that product for their livestock. And that no one in New Zealand is talking about that.
No, I agree. There's all sorts of ethical holes in this. So yeah, I mean, it is not that different from saying, you look at the FDA. I think it's 11 of the 12 largest commissioners have gone and worked for pharma. It's the same sort of thing there. So the government should be sort of step back and just taking the public side in this. But as soon as they get into the industry itself, then they have this conflict of interest.
Yeah, so in New Zealand, the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment has pulled together, working with Crown Law and the Attorney General, Judith Collins, this gene technology bill. So the Ministry for Business and Innovation is developing the regulations for legislation that should steward a technology in human health and in the environment. And so they're pulling out the precautionary principle, which is in the Hazardous Substances Act, and they're putting in must have regard for the provisions of the Convention on Biological Diversity and Cartagena Protocol. But having regard for in law does not place an obligation on officials to take the matter into account. So we see them subverting bioethics. The Royal Commission 20 years ago in New Zealand said we need a bioethics task force. That's never happened. In COVID, we didn't have a bioethics task force. And now they've pushed ethics aside.